We'll move on to Dr. Ravindra Utgikar. A short side note, a few months back, I was in a panel where Dr. Ravi was the moderator and I was a panelist there. Now we just swapped the places now, so that's what we were just discussing. But it was a wonderful session also then, and would like to see also one more session here on a different note, but yeah.
It's such a pleasure to be back on the stage with you, Venkatesh. Always a pleasure. My name is Dr. Ravindra Utgikar. I have a doctorate in international marketing strategies and over 3 decades of industry experience in control, automation, process industry, and last 2 decades in the renewables, having spent over a decade in solar, in wind and solar. Last about 8 years, I've been working in the area of biofuels or bioenergy. So very excited to be here. The company I represent, Praj Industries, is India's best known industrial biotechnology company with over 1,000 references in over 100 countries across all 5 continents. We provide the biotechnology solutions in the bioeconomy. So bioeconomy, as many of us may know, is a knowledge-based economy for production of materials, chemicals, and fuels using biological feedstock, which is renewable in nature, which is low carbon in nature. So in that sense, it facilitates circular economy, reduce, recycle, reuse, replenish, replace, repurpose, rescale. So very excited to be part of this panel, looking forward to very engaging discussions. A lot already is being talked about wind and solar. Bioenergy and biofuels is not a topic which is as much spoken about, but we firmly believe, Venkatesh, biofuels is an idea whose time has come. So looking forward to more meaningful discussions here. Thanks again.
How is the demand picking up on this? Because it's a very important element on REDE, the demand enhancement aspect which we look about on the renewable energy. Bioenergy plays a very important role there. So how is this demand picking up, and also how are we doing on that biofuel development?
Okay, that's a great question for starters. Like I said, bioeconomy is a knowledge-based bioeconomy, and our company is involved into accelerating the energy transition through bioeconomy. In the bioeconomy, there are various verticals. One of that is industrial biotechnology, of which biofuels is a pillar or a mainstay. India is doing very well on the biofuels front. In fact, just earlier this week, Honorable Minister Puri announced a global biofuel alliance where India, US and Brazil are leading that alliance to take the biofuel propagation to a greater heights. In the earlier panel discussions, I think, Venkatesh, you mentioned very well that India is blessed with sun, land and agriculture. These are our captive resources. And we need to leverage our captive resources to create value for our nation so that we reduce our dependency on the imported sources of fossil fuel. And that's where bioenergy comes in. Bioenergy also positively impacts social, economical, environmental, and energy aspects. Why social? Because it has a farming community element into it. Unlike any other renewable energy source, most of the bio feedstock is coming from the agricultural or agri-waste or agri-residue, which provides farmer incremental revenue stream in addition to his harvesting of crop. It provides him employment opportunities. It provides a decentralized, self-sustaining bioplants model in the rural parts of India, which actually curbs the rural to urban migration. That's the social aspect. Energy aspect we spoke about, being a captive resource, it actually helps India move a step ahead in the direction of energy self-sufficiency because it's our own resource. As for the environmental aspect, it's a renewable resource. It's a low carbon resource. Unlike fossil fuels, which are deeply in the Mother Earth, beneath the Earth's surface, we actually extract them, we actually combust them, and we actually add to the carbon emissions which already are there in the atmosphere. So that's how we are getting into the higher greenhouse gas emission zone. Contrary to that, biofuels are coming from renewable resources, which is biological resources, which are all above the Earth's surface. We all have studied that plants absorb carbon dioxide, and when goods, products, materials, chemicals, fuels made from plants, when consumed, emit carbon dioxide. So in a way, you have plants absorbing carbon dioxide and there is an emission of carbon dioxide. So you are actually talking about a low carbon or carbon neutral cycle. So it has a positive socio-economical environmental impact. The third important aspect is that India is taking great strides in ethanol blending program. So today we stand at about 12% and we have plans to move up to 20%. And all up to 20%, there are no major changes in the original equipment manufacturers of the automobile. So we are doing very well on the biofuel side. We are also doing very well as a part of green growth agenda presented in this budget. The government plans to set up 500 compressed biogas plants, which are like compressed natural gas. You have compressed biogas. These plants are also going to help us inch closer to energy self-sustainability. And the last important point I wanted to make in the where are we as far as biofuels is concerned is on the aviation side. Remember, transportation is a hard to abate sector. It's emission intense, you can't do without it. So the aviation sector also is responsible for significant greenhouse gas emissions. So our company teamed up with AirAsia India and IOCL to fly India's first ever commercial passenger flight that used SAF blend which was made in India. So I think this was a big statement that India is readying itself to become a sustainable aviation fuel hub to manage not only the air traffic in India but also globally. So I think in short, we are doing extremely well and we are seen as one of the leader in the biofuel space, and I'm happy to share that about 10% of the global biofuels capacity, except China, is built on Praj's technology and technology solutions.
How do you see the scalability of these biofuels and what challenges do you see there? Because I already know, the availability of how you are collecting this bio-waste and then, channelizing towards converting into the biofuel. That itself, a lot of wastes are there. And again, when we segregate the dry and the wet waste, there is a lot of wastage which is happening. So how do you see these developments and what are the perspectives and any other challenges you see in the shorter term and what are the directions you are going to put it up?
Good. I mean, I don't think there is any industry that is free of challenges, and we, in that sense, biofuels is coming of age now. So unlike coal, unlike oil, there is no established supply chains. Coal has all this. You're right that generation point of fossil resources and consumption points are far-fetched. You have rail network, and then you have oil refineries, and you have piping network. But for the biofuels industry to take off, you need to develop that backward supply chain. So we need to strengthen the industry ecosystem, starting with the feedstock, because the developers will look at the security of supply of feedstock. So therefore, one of the challenge we have is that how do you ensure the sustained supply of feedstock? And the farmers, because the window of, 2 seasons is so short that farmers tend to burn off the agricultural residue or the stubble. How do we change the mindset so that instead of burning the agricultural residue, which in turn gives rise to pollution and brown clouding in the northern part of the region and giving health issues and so on and so forth, how do we change the mindset? That's the second part, which means we need education. Technology is maturing, so there is lots of first of its kind projects that are coming on. The technology provider need to shell out money from his pocket to be able to prove the technology from flask to bench to pilot to demo to commercial scale. First of its kind project need funding. So that's another thing that we need to look at. How do we make sure that happens? How do you integrate, and I think Pankaj spoke very well, how do you integrate different technologies, because India needs energy no matter which form it comes from. So how do you harness the synergies between various energy sources is another challenge. industries, academia, institutions, financiers, bankers, energy off-takers, developers, regulators, landowners, farmers. How do we bring them all on one page? How do we derive synergies? We need a regulatory body, and MEDA has done fantastic. I worked in wind from the beginning of this millennium when it was at a very nascent stage. Solar wasn't even there. But we have traveled a great distance. Can we do that for biofuels? It's another thing. So the challenges remain. You need long-term visibility of policy so that the investor is induced to make these capital commitments. That's another thing. But the good part, Venkatesh, is there are great drivers. And climate change is a great reminder. I think Mr. Mirji spoke in the earlier session that Death Valley in the borders of California and Nevada recorded a temperature of 53.3 degrees centigrade, which is the highest temperature, second highest temperature recorded ever. 3rd July this year was the highest recorded temperature of 17.3 degrees centigrade average global temperature, which are dark reminders, climate disasters. Look at what is happening in North. So if you look at the climate disasters in the last 2 decades of previous millennium versus the climate calamities and disasters of first 2 decades of this millennium, there is a significant rise that has caused immense economic damage, capital damage, human loss damages. While all the economic damages were in developed nations, the loss of lives, 9 out of 10 lives were lost in developing nations. So climate change is a great driver in that regard. So is sustainable development goals. We are talking of net zero goals of 2070, but there are SDGs which are maturing by 2030. Bioeconomy encompasses 11 of the 17 sustainable development goals. So that's again a big driver. Honorable Minister said in the Parliament that the biofuels alone, local production of biofuels has alone contributed to the extent of saving of 42,000 crores rupees in last 10 years. I mean, when in 2013-14, the blending percent was 1.5. Today we are at 12%. So you can imagine the travel that we have done. And if we continue with 20% blend, 12,000 crore rupees of annual saving of foreign exchange will be achieved. So that's again a very, very important driver. So there are environmental drivers, there are social drivers. So all in all, I think we really believe biofuels is an idea whose time has come. Yes, there are challenges, but definitely we have a will. We have leadership, we have talent. I think somebody in the previous session spoke that we have land, we have talent, we have resources. All it needs to happen is all of this need to work in sync. We need to synergize. And I think magic is not very far.
I'm Honorary Director for the Indian Institute of Naturopathy, and I was invited in Vienna Energy Forum in 2015. And what I had suggested over there, from consumer point of view, because industries are talking too much, but consumer also to be taken care of, and that is important. Usually we consume about 90% cooked food and 10% uncooked food. So if we change that percentage from 10% to 50%, slowly, of course, energy will be saved in cooking or all other activities. So that was my suggestion, and that point was taken there in that Vienna Energy Forum. This year, in September also, I may be visiting Vienna Energy Forum 2023. So that is my message. Thank you.
Venkatesh, that's a brilliant point he makes. Because I think, when there is a consumer push, and I'm talking about now again of biofuels, we are paying like 110 rupees a liter for the petrol. If you have a ethanol blended petrol or 100% ethanol, vehicles running on 100% ethanol, Honorable Minister Gadkari had said that you will have to pay maybe 50 rupees. But the differential pricing policy of fuels is yet to come here, what we see in America already. So I think consumer awareness is very important because that push is unrelenting. Very well said.
And exactly, these type of, these are not any industrial revolutions or anything happening. It's basically our type of culture which we used to have. And previously, if we think about maybe 50 years back, when the villagers used to be living in villages and consume that type of food, it used to be maybe even more percent. I don't know the exact percentage, but it used to be more. Nowadays, we are more moving into fast foods and that type of chain, which is more, the pace of life has changed, and which has also bring us to a different type of life. But surely sometimes we have to stop and look back, or, you know, align and tune up to these type of dimensions will also help us.
Talking on a lighter vein, the way Russia has pulled out of that Black Sea deal, it will indeed be not very far that we'll have to do with less food, and there will be a food crisis that is on the card. So I think what you say.
How do you compare biomass, if you use biomass for production of green hydrogen versus electrolysis process if you produce green hydrogen? That is point number one. And the second question is, while you spoke of changing the mindset of the people at the large, when you are going for collection of biostock, waste feedstock, collection of that, aggregation of that, what exactly is Praj Industries doing that for changing that mindset? Wonderful. On ground, what are the activities which are being taken?
Wonderful, great questions. Let me take one by one. As I think Venkatesh said very well, all these technologies, blue, green, gray, black, all hydrogen making technologies are still to see the, what shall I say, definitive price point, because they are all in a development stage. There are various pilot projects that have given some indications, but I think the scale up, the level at which we are talking, we are yet to see a definitive answer. So jury is not really out. At Praj Industries also, we have the state-of-the-art R&D facility where we are also doing several experiments using different types of biomass as to see how we can use the biomass to get actually the hydrogen. And then, you know, fuel cell electric vehicles is another thing where you can actually do onboard charging. And so there are a number of applications. So all in all, the promise of hydrogen remains. Whether we can really realize that promise is something which time will tell. So it's really, really premature to say that. And I think sir just put some numbers on table, and it's a journey was a word I think Venkatesh used, and very well so. So jury is yet out, question number one.
Just to add to those numbers, out of that 4,50,000, 40,000 is through biomass.
Yes.
That tender. So which again is a very huge quantity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there are concerted efforts going on. But you know, like I said, you know, these are first of its kind project. There is a fine tuning that is going on. There is efficiency improvement that is going on. You're looking at new microbes. You're looking at new microorganisms. You're looking at cutting down the cycle time, so on and so forth. So we'll see. But definitely we are in the chase. The race has just, I think it's on. Let me put it that way. The second question, very well said, is what are we doing to change the mindset of people? So, you know, education is single word answer. And how do you educate people? You go and take road shows. There are, just like MEDA, there is PEDA, and there are a number of state level agencies. CII per se has a biofuel cell. They do number of programs to actually educate people. So, and these programs are not necessarily held in metros. They are held in interiors, you know. For instance, Maharashtra, Punjab, and Uttar Pradesh are the most sugarcane states. Rest, elsewhere, there is no much sugarcane state. So you have to go and tell other farmers as to how they can actually be a part of the biofuels movement, or for that matter, anything that goes on the bioenergy side. So one is you have to educate. Second, you need to team up. Companies like John Deere, for example, are actually having agricultural equipments which actually facilitate the extraction of biomass and actually compaction of biomass, and then making the biomass supply chain happen. And then there are farmer producer organizations which, like Amul model, can collect the biomass waste and actually store and ensure a sustained supply. So there is a lot of work, not just on the farmer side, but also to develop the entire ecosystem. So it's work in progress, but we are doing as much as we can, but it's all about a team sport. It's a team sport.
On the municipal solid waste collection also?
That's again a great point. You know, municipal solid waste, Venkatesh, is also untapped source. The challenge, like he was telling, is the aggregation and segregation, you know. So we are not by design able to separate waste, I mean wet waste and dry waste, and then biodegradable waste and not non-biodegradable waste, plus more often than not, municipal solid waste plants are managed by the corporation, they are subcontracted. So again, there is a what shall I say, alignment of that supply chain.
We
that
have
is
started
needed.
on the journey, I would say, and it needs to improve. Some cities, I think Indore was
Indore
talked
was
out
one
as a,
where,
as a
where
city. So,
they are.
so there are some stories which we have to still promote more, and you know, as a country, as a state, as a country, we have to evolve on that. But that's a journey which surely, you know, maybe the journey took maybe 30 years or something like that, but the next 3-5 years, the leapfrogging to pole vaulting, as I was
Wonderful,
mentioning,
yeah.
will happen in many of these areas, and we will see a substantial change in all that.